United Heavy, runway 26, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 26, heavy bridge, United Heavy.
Welcome to the Aeropedia Podcast. I'm Ashwin.
And I'm Peter. Today's topic is airport management. We have the pleasure of having Marty Lenz with us. Marty is the airport director of the Eastern Iowa Airport, also CID for the code. Prior to being airport director at CID, Marty served as executive director of the Rochester Airport Company in Rochester, Minnesota, and was airport director for the Appleton International Airport in Appleton, Wisconsin. Marty graduated from the University of North Dakota and holds a bachelor's degree in airport administration and business management. Ashwin, you know the area in front of the terminal is only for loading and unloading, right?
Oh, no wonder I keep getting parking tickets. Anyway, let's dive into our episode for today.
Well, Marty, thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to have you, and we usually kick things off with giving you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience and a little bit about your background and how you got into aviation. So,
Well, thank you both for the invitation and appreciate that. These are always, fun things to do. So I appreciate the opportunity. As far as background, I'm youngest of five. I grew up in the Twin Cities, a suburb of Minneapolis, St. Paul. It got interested in aviation from, my very first plane ride. I think I was about seventh grade, actually. So just got interested in aviation at that time. Went to the University of North Dakota and thought I wanted to be a pilot. Probably true of a lot of airport directors. They were bad pilots and stayed in airport management or ran out of money back then. In my case, I'm not sure which one. If I was a bad pilot, but I know I ran out of money. So I changed majors. I think it was about my junior year into airport administration. So interned at Minneapolis St. Paul Airport in Noise while I was in school. And then I say my first real job was at Tulsa, Oklahoma Airport in airport operations. And then things went from there. So that's kind of my background. I've been in airport administration now for, over 30 years.
So Marty, within that airport administration journey, what sort of roles have you had over the years and how have those roles evolved?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first got in the business, I would say, and I'll come back to my progression. A lot of positions or senior leadership, and it's somewhat true today, but less so, were former military. Either a military pilot or maybe they were airfield managers of some sort or another. And I think that's changed, and for a variety of reasons. But that's was pretty common when I was coming up in the industry. I started out in airport operation. Well, my background being in noise and environmental at Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, I discovered was a great intro into airports. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about engaging with the public. Granted, I was an intern and then I was in a full-time temporary job for a while. But just got to see the engagement that the airport had with the community on, sensitive subjects. Tulsa, Oklahoma was airport operations, and I feel like airport operations is where I really kind of cut my teeth, if you will. And there we also got combined with airport law enforcement, which was pretty unique. So I found myself going through a law enforcement academy, and so was a certified peace officer in the state of Oklahoma for a period of time. So I did both jobs, law enforcement and airport operations. And airport operations for me, I found it to be kind of the heartbeat of the airport. You're on the airfield. You're engaging with the tenants, the pilots, every day. You were doing things with snow and ice control, wildlife management, stormwater pollution prevention, any number of things. And then because you're out and about and not behind a desk at that, you're engaging with the public all the time. So that was just really a great experience, and I think developing kind of interpersonal skills. And then, that from there, I progressed to an assistant airport director at a smaller airport. Then progressed to director of operations and public safety at a little bit larger airport, a small hub airport. Airport director from there. So that's kind of been my progression, and I think it's a little bit. It's probably not. I guess I would say it's unique, but maybe it's not for other jobs. But in order to progress in airport management, you tend to have to move or be willing to relocate. And so, we've lived in, Twin Cities, like I said, Oklahoma, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Madison, Wisconsin, Appleton, Wisconsin, Rochester, Minnesota, and then now Cedar Rapids for the past, coming up, it'll be 10 years in this coming January. So, so just really enjoy it.
Wow, that's quite the tour of the Midwest.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what's next. But there's just I've heard great things happening at within all of the airports in Iowa, right? So I think it just shows that these roles are so important in kind of creating the growth engine of that entire region, essentially, right? So what about, you mentioned your roles, but could you just educate us and the audience about what other roles exist behind the scenes at an airport that become kind of the life and blood of the airport and help the airport function on the airfield and on the terminal side?
Yeah. So airport specific here at CID, we have approximately, there's 68 full-time employees. Most of the staff are in maintenance roles. So, whether that's terminal maintenance or airfield maintenance. Or I should say building maintenance, because we have, we own all the hangars here at the airport and lease them out. So, we have folks that are working on HVAC systems, electricians, on the airfield, a lot of pavement maintenance, painting, the airfield, lighting issues on the airfield, and all of these items we get inspected. As you imagine in aviation, there's a lot of safety and regulatory environment, both on the security side as well as airfield safety. And so very tight tolerances from, pavement edges, for example, cannot exceed a 3-inch lip. And so our folks are taking care of that. They're removing the snow and ice during inclement weather. Building maintenance, like I said, keeping the jetways going, baggage systems going. In the airport administration, that finance is important. It's an expensive enterprise to operate, and marketing and communications, IT. We have a director of properties and business development that's dealing with. We have 120 plus leases or contracts of some sort that they deal with. Accounting for purchases, receivables, payables, payroll, those sorts of things. And then a director of public safety and operations. And then our public safety department is unique in that they wear 3 hats, if you will. One is airport operations, which is, as I described earlier, kind of airfield safety, airfield inspections, wildlife control, some environmental inspections as well, fuel farm inspections, fuel truck inspections, that sort of thing. And they also do airport law enforcement activities. So they are certified law enforcement for the state of Iowa. And then they also are certified airport firefighters. So they're here 24/7 and in uniform and are the first response for, if it's a simple slip and fall, if it's medical conditions or that might come in from time to time with the public coming through the building. Since we have roughly 3 million unique visitors a year. So, things happen. And so we have a team that's always ready to respond to that. And then the rest of the airport team, people will meet TSA, federal employee, as they go through security screening. They lease space from the airport. So in some respects, they're a tenant of the airport. They also perform, a highly important function of securing the sterile area of the airport, and screening passengers and baggage. But they are a federal employee. Our air traffic control are federal as well, federal air traffic control. And then they also have a maintenance team with the FAA that go out within the region and maintain nav aids, navigational aids at airports and around the region. So instrument landing systems, radar systems, things like that are FAA equipment that's relevant to the National Airspace Network. That maintenance team will go out and maintain it, and they reside here at the airport. Our fixed-based operator, which we just opened up a new FBO. It's operated by Signature Flight Support. They're a separate entity contracted by the airport. They provide services for general aviation and private corporate aviation. They also do the fueling for the airlines, de-icing services. We have our cargo carriers. We have 3 of them, DHL, UPS, and FedEx. We also have 5 airlines. So you might come to a ticket counter. And what's interesting there is, depending on the airline, they're a contractor to the carrier. So they're not a direct employee of, say, Delta. It's a contractor employee that's doing your baggage handling, your ticketing, and those sorts of things, de-icing that aircraft on behalf of Delta. And then you get on the aircraft, maybe it is a Delta mainline. Delta employees are on that aircraft to pilot the crew. It could be a regional jet operating as a Delta Express carrier, like SkyWest, which is still not Delta, but branded as Delta. So I think, it's unique in that regard that there's a lot of different employees at an airport, most of which are not direct employees of the airport. Rental cars is another example. They're not direct employees of the airport. So that makes it a unique environment, particularly when we're trying to deliver a high quality customer experience.
So talk to us a bit about the last decade or two, right? How and specifically in what areas has the airport grown?
Yeah. So in the biggest thing I think most people will notice at CID is the passenger volume has grown quite a bit. We've been for the past decade doing a terminal modernization program that originally started in roughly 2014. It was envisioned to be 4-phase projects, so each phase was a separately bid project by design. That way, if there was any interruption in the industry, the airport could stop, phase 1 at the end of it and not proceed further. So we could stop the spend, let the industry adjust and correct and that sort of thing before we moved into phase 2 and bid that out. That 4-phase project was estimated to be $50 million at the time. We are in final phase 4 as we speak. That'll be done next spring. Once we're done, we will be about $121 million 4-phase project, so more than double from what we originally envisioned. We're very proud to say no bonds at all, no debt. We've paid cash as we went, and then certainly compete very aggressively in the grant arena, federal and state grants that have been made available for airports and terminal construction. We've been very aggressive in those programs. So that's what folks will see probably most notable. Last year, we had a great year. We announced 3 new routes, which is very unusual. We have 3 new cities in 1 year. The biggest announcement, I think, was American to nonstop service to DCA. So linking the Eastern Iowa region to the nation's capital is really phenomenal. As you mentioned, Ashwin, the business community ability to get to the nation's capital for business. Some of our biggest employers now are headquartered out there, is just vital to keeping a thriving economy. We also announced an American Saturday-only seasonal service to Miami, and then Allegiant announced Fort Lauderdale twice a week. So really a good year. So other growth that we've seen, we've really been focused on creating an aviation workforce environment here at the airport. And we were so excited that Kirkwood announced plans to move forward with their aviation maintenance program. That was announced. That was about a 6-year effort, quite honestly. So of discussions with industry, discussions with Kirkwood, and we just launched with that program in partnership with Kirkwood here last August. Their first class was full, which is fantastic, 24 seats. They had 24 students. They just announced the second class. That is also full. So very exciting. They now have a partnership for a pathway agreement with SkyWest Regional Airlines, which is the nation's, largest regional airline, which great opportunities for students if they want to pursue an airline career, but also great employment opportunities across the state of Iowa with large aviation employers, in and around the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area. So we're optimistic that, soon we'll be announcing a 4-year flight school, which will be very exciting. So we'll start training pilots here as well as mechanics. But lots of things going on right now, but a great time, I think, to be at CID. Our passenger numbers are up. We had a record month last year. We continue to have very positive load factors, and air service is going well. But I tell everybody that has little to do with what we do at the airport. The terminal could be, built and gold plated, and could have, free rent. But if the community and the region's not using that air service, there's nothing I can do to go get new service. The community's absolutely got to use it, especially nowadays. It's kind of a zero-sum game, use it or lose it. And thankfully, where we've seen new service come in, the community's responded. And because of that response, it's enabled us to continue to grow. That's why, American's a perfect example. When they announced Charlotte here several years ago, it did very, very well. That gave American confidence in the market. They launched nonstop Phoenix Sky Harbor service. That did incredibly well. And in both of those markets, they're adding frequency this year. Because of that, Chicago has been strong. Dallas has been strong. Charlotte, Phoenix, American had confidence to add DCA. So, that ability to get DCA is directly attributed to the community responded to service by American when it was added. And so, Denver's been going strong for United. They're adding service a lot. You see the airlines, all three of the big three, American, Delta, United, adding mainline service into the community. And that's a big investment. That's a very expensive aircraft that can literally be anywhere in the country. And the fact that our community fills that up and keep using it is important for, that for the airlines to keep that investment coming. So a big thank you to the community in the region, because without their support, it's real hard for us to keep it going on the air service side. So
one thing that kind of caught my attention there is your growth has been all cash, right?
okay.
Yeah, and that's just a testament to how strong the performance has been, right? So just talk to us about that revenue stream, and we kind of understand that landing fees are a part of it, but there's so many other streams, right? So just talk to us about what are the streams, what are the revenue streams at the airport, and how are they viewed by yourself and your team, and then what are the biggest growth drivers out there?
Yeah. So in broad categories, we kind of have four key lines of business at the airport: air service, air cargo, property development, and then general aviation or corporate aviation are kind of the four key buckets. So in broad strokes, air service represents, don't check my math on this, I'll probably be north of 100%, but you get the idea. So passenger service accounts for roughly 84% of our revenue. And when I say that, that's airline revenue directly, like landing fees, as you mentioned, ticket counter rent, terminal building rent, those sorts of things, or other services that might be provided to the carriers. But the bulk of it is landing fees, terminal rent for the airlines. We also collect a passenger facility charge off of every ticket sold through CID. Those dollars come back to us to essentially fund the terminal project. That's again $4.50. But then when rental cars is another big component of revenue in the terminal, as is restaurants or concession sales, hamburger sales, beer sales, or a Cedar Ridge bourbon. We get a piece of all of that. And then parking is our number one revenue stream. But those revenue streams I just mentioned are all directly tied to airline service, right? If you don't have airline service, parking revenue zero, rental cars are zero. Nobody's buying a hamburger. So all of that is where it make up that roughly 83% I mentioned earlier. So air service is a very key thing to us. So, COVID, for example, April of that year when COVID really hit, we were off 97% in passengers. You can imagine what the environment around the administration office was like when 84% of your revenue is tied to that. It was a very concerning time. So other key lines, so air cargo represents roughly, it varies, but somewhere between 9 to 11%. And that is building rent. So the UPS facility I mentioned earlier, we built and own as the airport commission and lease it back to UPS. That's true of FedEx. We own the facility and lease it back. That's true of DHL. We own the building and lease it back. So we also get landing fees from the cargo carriers. We get some ramp fees from cargo carriers, but significantly less revenue off of cargo than the passenger side. Then, the remainder is kind of split evenly. So we lease, many people may not know, but we're the largest farmer in Lynn County. So we contract approximately 2,000 acres with 3 area farmers for either soybean or corn throughout every planting season. And we do fairly well on farmland rent.
So one thing back earlier, you were talking about the maintenance of the airport and the airside operations and that. how much of the equipment that's on the airfield is maintained by the airport versus the FAA or the air traffic organization?
Yeah, so the equipment, so all the airfield equipment in terms of snow removal equipment, fire trucks, that sort of stuff, police vehicles, that's all airport commission owned equipment. Equipment on the airfield, so landing, so you think of PAPIs or that's maintained kind of a hybrid. The FAA maintains most of them. The ILS system, the instrument landing system, the FAA maintains. The radar, the FAA maintains. The lighting, the light lanes that go out from the runway, those are all FAA maintains. The runway lights themselves, the edge lights, are airport maintained. So that's kind of the split. I'm trying to think. I'm sure I missed a few things here or there, but yeah. So our FAA maintenance will be out on the airfield, alongside of us, and we'll help each other out if we need to. It's a very, cordial relationship. I mean, we're all there for the same objective, and but there's definite, lines of who maintains what. So, but it's, they do a great job. And if you've been out here to the airport, they're actually, there's a small office building kind of at the base of the tower. That is where FAA Airway Facilities is at. And again, they maintain everything here. Like I said, the ILS, and they go out in the region as well and maintain those items.
So Marty, the next section is just rapid fire questions to get to know you a bit better and get your perspective on certain things that will benefit some of the non-aviation folks, some of the younger folks trying to get into aviation, etc.
Yeah.
So the first question I had for you there is, name one hard and one soft skill that's required to succeed in your role.
Hard skill, it's hard to say one. I think a base level finance accounting is probably key. There's certainly others, but I think that's a key component. Soft skill, I hate to say one, it's really kind of two. I would say that adaptability and interpersonal skills, because working, within the federal state grant arena is really, like most jobs, there's a relationship component. So those interpersonal skills are really vital.
Next one is, what's your favorite or fondest aviation memory?
I happened to meet Coach Bobby Knight. And so for those listeners that know Bobby Knight, when he was at Indiana as a basketball coach, he was a pretty rough character. And he was coming through the airport terminal in Madison. And I was a fan of Bobby Knight as a kid. Wanted to play basketball at Indiana for Coach Knight. It was a big goal. And so I thought I better meet him. So as I went up to meet him, I said, "Hey, Coach Knight," introduced myself, said, "Name's Marty Lenz. I've been a huge fan of yours. I read your books, and, it was my dream to play basketball for you at Indiana." And Coach Knight put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Well, I'm sure you're a good kid, but I'm confident you weren't much of a basketball player." Which, if you know Coach Knight, I thought, boy, I'll remember that forever. And that's 20 years ago. But that was a fun memory.
Oh, pretty cool. Yeah, it's so cool that, as aviation professionals, we get to meet so many folks at the airport, in the aircraft. I think it's
Well, and Iowa is unique in that, I would say it's a fond memory developing, and that, you think of the election campaigns, and all of that flows through Iowa, is a pretty unique. So you get to, meet presidents, former presidents, presidents-elect, all that sort of stuff. And so that's pretty neat.
So name, a part of aviation that you feel is misunderstood or least understood by the general public, and what can they do to learn more about it?
Well, I actually asked that question of a friend, and we were chuckling and said that, most airport directors are failed pilots. But I would say, I think the most misunderstood is how, in some respects, how little control the airport has on air service. I mean, clearly we have a role on, our rates and charges and that sort of thing. But we don't directly control the de-icing activities. At the gate availability, if there's enough crew to pull that aircraft in, it's not the airport's team, pulling bags off the plane and getting it to bag claim and that sort of thing. I think those are common misconceptions that people think, the airport director just controls all that. And we don't, or ticket prices, that sort of stuff we don't control. But, like I said, we certainly play a role in it, but and can influence it, but we have very little direct control. So I think, it's just good for folks to understand the different roles that are at the airport. And it might help, understanding as people move throughout the system, who actually does what.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and hopefully this episode helps clarify some of those roles, right? Okay, one last question is, tell us about your favorite trip leg, right? So, what airline were you on? What was the origin? What was the destination? Preferably what aircraft as well, and why was that memorable? What made you think, wow, this is a great travel experience?
Gosh, it's my most memorable trip I would have to say it's that first flight, because that really just spurred the interest. I up until that point, being the youngest of five, and we didn't travel by air, we traveled by station wagon with no seatbelts and jumped around the back. So my first flight, like I said earlier, I was probably in 7th grade, and it was Northwest Airlines at the time, flying out of the Twin Cities to Newfoundland, Canada, and to see my sister, who was teaching at the Navy base in Newfoundland, Canada. She was a civilian school teacher. And I think it was just the whole experience of traveling through. I think our first stop probably was Toronto. I'm pretty sure that's right. We went from Minneapolis to Toronto, had to clear customs, just to experience all that on my first flight, and the people and the process and how amazing it was to get up one morning in Minneapolis and be in Newfoundland, Canada that same day, whatever it was, 8 hours later, just seems so amazing to me. I'd tell you, it was, because it was real windy when we got to Newfoundland. It was a bumpy ride going in, but it didn't discourage me, and that forever lit that fire. I didn't know about the programs then that are out there now, like Young EAA, Young Eagles program, that we host Young Eagles events here at the airport, where folks can come out and kids can take a free flight, and private aircraft owners volunteer their time. It's a great introductory opportunity for kids. But that first flight lit the flame, and I've never looked back. I guess I've always been around airports, and like I said earlier, wanted to fly, and got my private instrument, and maybe here in the next year or two I might get back into it, and we're thinking about it, but we'll see. I just firmly believe if you're going to be a pilot, you got to stay active and fly regularly to be, a safe, good pilot. And I just, at this stage, have a lot of other hobbies and interests that'll distract So, but
So what was bumpier, the back of the station wagon or the approach into Newfoundland?
well, it all depends. I mean, if we were misbehaving, it got real bumpy when the brakes went on and we were pulling over to the side of the road for Dad to have a meeting of the minds, if you will, on the side of a road, and it's in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin.
That's right.
It could be very bumpy.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Marty. So Peter,
Yeah.
moving on to the next section.
All right, Marty, this is your trivia round.
Uh-oh.
I know you're not a big fan of trivia, but we're going to force you down this path anyway. So I think you might get one or two right. So here we go. For those of you listening in, you can view in on our Aeroscope Aviation YouTube channel, and you can see the pictures that I'm showing Marty for these questions here.
Okay.
All right. So Marty, your first question, it's airplane spotting. Can you identify one of the two major visual differences between the de Havilland Canada -7 and the -8? Two kind of major differences.
Boy, that's going back in the memory banks. I believe one of the two is one of the two 4-engine, one's 2-engine.
Yes, yes, it is.
I just can't remember which is which. If it was,
That's okay. I didn't say for you to say which is which. Actually, now that I read the question, I just asked you to identify the visual difference, and you did.
Yeah, so that's yeah, there you go.
So there you go. So you're correct. The -7 had 4 engines and the -8 had 2. The other noticeable difference is the nose, a little more aerodynamic on the -8, and there was a bit of more obtrusive window on the -7. But well done. You're 1 for 1 so far. All right, let's keep this going.
The fact that I even know that.
Airports. Okay, this one, and back to your wildlife, the things you need to keep off the airfield. In 1987, a Boeing 737 departed this airport, collided with a salmon in midair, and it's become the only known midair fish strike on record. Can you name the airport that this happened at?
That's a great question.
And I don't think it's Cedar Rapids.
No, so I'm guessing Alaska somewhere, but I wouldn't think Anchorage. It's probably Keokuk or something, one of those.
Very
Alaska.
close. Here's a picture of it.
Or yeah, that's and I think that's got one approach in, right?
Goes through the channel. Yep, you're
Yeah,
right. It's Juneau.
Juneau,
Alaska. You got very close. That was
in the
impressive.
right state.
I'll give you a quarter of a point for that one. All right. Number 3, regulatory authorities. A little outside the norm here of the US, but what is the title of the Civil Aviation Authority in Canada?
Title of the
And an acronym is okay too.
ICAO, or that's the International Civil. Sorry,
Yes.
I should know this because Transport Canada.
Correct. Transport Canada is the correct answer. So,
Wow, we have Canadian members in the Great Lakes chapter, so I probably have got up.
all right. Well, you got 2 so far. All right.
2 1/4.
2 1/4. That's right. Thank you for clarifying. All right. IATA codes. Number 4. This is a fellow airport. Papa Alpha Echo.
An IATA code, boy. I probably should know this one.
This one has a very large aircraft manufacturer presence.
No. Pasco, Washington.
You got the state right. It's actually Payne Field,
Field.
Everett in Washington State. So you got to the right coast and you got to the right state.
Yeah, I was getting Pasco and Payne. Yeah. Isn't Payne also known as the county there? It's Snohomish.
Yep, Snohomish County. Yep. Yep.
I should have known that.
All right. Last one, airlines. This fruit-named airline is the parent company of another airline named after a Colorado city. Can you name either or both of these airlines?
Fruit
name and a Colorado city.
This fruit-named airline is the parent company of another airline named for a Cali. That one I'm drawing a blank. Fruit-named airline.
Ashwin, do you want to throw a guess?
I would think Aspen Air and is it Peach Airlines?
Peach is in Japan.
Oh yeah, correct.
And Aspen is correct to Colorado City. It is actually Key Lime Air and Denver Air Connection. So Denver Air Connection is a member of the Key Lime Air family. So
okay.
We have fruit salad here on the Aeropedia podcast.
I
Well
didn't do
done,
very
Marty. 2.25 points out of 5.
That's terrible.
No, it's not.
I
I think
should've
we all
known
learned
Payne
something.
Field.
So,
Yeah, I should have known Payne Field, but
well, thank you so much, Marty, for taking your time to talk to our audience about airport operations and being airport director and your background. It was really informative and really appreciate your time.
yeah, my pleasure. And thanks for the invitation. Have a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
Take care. Go Hawks.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this week. Send us any feedback, trivia ideas, or future topics you may have to our email at aeropedia.podcast@gmail.com. See you on the next leg of our journey.
Bye for now.
Departure any heavy, contact departure 119.2, good night.
49.2, speed of 290 heavy.